Hello, everyone. I am David from the Dyson Dudes, and tonight we're going to be reviewing Viscounts of the West Kingdom. This is a game from Renegade Games, part of a series of games that started with the Paladins of the West Kingdom, then the Architects of the West Kingdom, and finally Viscounts of the West Kingdom. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, and it's been a couple of months since we've been on the air, so we're very glad to be back. Tonight, we're simply going to be talking about a board game, talking about our thoughts about it, and letting you know how we feel about it when everything is said and done. I'm going to quickly run through the game on how it's played. Then I'm going to start talking about my various talking points for other reviews. If this is the first time that you've joined us here at Dyson Dudes, we thank you very, very much for joining us, and we hope you will be coming back as we will have a lot more board game and Dungeons and Dragons content coming your way. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into Viscounts of the West Kingdom. So, in this game that is designed by Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald, and I'm going to do my best with the illustrator's name, Mihalo Dimistrevsky, who's illustrated all of these games from them, Paladins, Architects, and Viscounts, as well as the North Sea games, and is a highlight of this style of game, actually. We are in this game. You are a Viscount. You are moving about the main board. You are taking various actions, and you are gaining victory points through the various things that you are going to be doing. Let's go ahead and let's talk about how a regular turn is going to be done. We're going to focus now on your player board, and we're going to show you how this is done. So, at the beginning of your turn, you're going to have 3 cards at your hand at the beginning of the game. Your board is going to look very much like this board sits now. At the beginning of your turn, you would slide any cards that are already on your board to the right. If there's one on this last space and it is slid off, then that card is discarded, and it can activate a discard effect that you can tell by this X over here on this part of your character board. So, if I played this card here, that would be a first turn play. Now, once I play this person, I now look to see if I played any criminals. For every criminal I have on the board, I have to take a point of corruption. Since this guy is not a criminal, no corruption has to be taken. I would simply move on to the next point of the next part of the turn, which would be movement here. So I look at the monetary value of this card, which is 2, which you can see at the top left of the card. Then I would have to move my character that number of spaces. So if we look at the main board over here, you'll see my blue Viscount piece is set up here. I would have to move. Now, the various arrows on the board may be hard to see under the camera right now, but they're pretty easy to see when you're sitting around the table. But I would take him, and I would have to move a minimum of 2 spaces. So I can move him once and then twice, or I can move him once, and since I have a down arrow, I can move him twice. Now, I could also pay coins, as many as I want, as many as I have, to continue to move 1 coin for 1 space. So if I wanted to move here, or if I want to move up here, I could spend a coin. That would move me here. If I want to spend another coin, I could move up here. If I want to spend another coin, I can move up here. But let's say we don't really want to do that. We want to kind of hold on to our money. So I would be ending my turn here, moving 1 and then moving 2. So coming back to the player board, we can look at a few things. So this icon here shows that I can dismiss the person in my space. So on the main board, you will see that there are these various piles of cards, and here on this one, I have the Scoundrel. Now, I can, for the cost of 1 coin, dismiss the Scoundrel and gain not only its icons, but its benefit, which would be on the top right. So, if I wanted to spend a single coin, which I could, I would take this Scoundrel, and I would discard them. They would be gone from the game completely, but I would gain the ability to discard a card from my hand. So if I had these 2 cards, I could discard 1, or I could discard a card from the top of my deck. But the big thing here is that symbol. That symbol right there is the criminal symbol. That's a wild symbol in this game. So I've dismissed that person and I've gained that symbol. I've decided not to dismiss, not to discard one of my cards. So coming back to the main player board, you'll see the actions. Now here, I'm simply going to describe the various actions that you can do. And they are segmented by various areas of the board. The outside of the board and the inside of the board. Sorry, I didn't mean to knock you down, bro. So over here, the first thing you have is taking the merchant action. On the outside of the board, you'll have the various blue bags of the merchant action. For each blue bag that you have, to start right now, I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 from the criminal. I could take that action. So if I'm sitting down here, right now, the merchant action wouldn't do me any good. But if I'm up here, for each 2 blue of these blue bags that I have currently on my board, I could gain 1 gold bar for each 2. So I would gain 2 gold bars for this action. If I was over here on this space, I could gain 2 inkwells for that action. If I was over on this space, I could gain 5 coins. So I'd be able to pick up 5 coins here from the bank, and that's a great way to gain money. Okay, that is the merchant action. Down here on the player board, the next one would be the build action. Now the build action is tied to these hammer icons. You can see I have another card in another character's hand, which would be mine. You have this card here, which has the hammer icon. You would add up your total number of hammer icons, and that would allow you to build one of the buildings. To build these, you need 3 hammer icons, 7 hammer icons, or 5 hammer icons. I'm not going to go through what every benefit of building a building is, but underneath each building is a benefit that you gain as soon as you build the building. The next thing that we're going to talk about here is the worker action. So if I'm down here, the build and the merchant action you would only do on this outer ring. The worker and the inkwell action, the manuscript action, you'd only do on the inner ring. So if I'm here on this space, I could use these fleur-de-lis or these gold bars in order to pay for that action. Discarding this gold here or having this here would allow me to put a certain number of workers on the board. So if you look here, it cost me 1 fleur-de-lis for 1 worker, 3 for 2, 5 for 3, and 8 for 4. So if I discarded this and I had my 1 fleur-de-lis here, I could take 2 of my workers, one of my workers, and I'd be able to put that worker up here. Now, when you're placing a worker, if at the end of your turn, or at the end of your placement, you have 3 workers, then you would have to advance your workers. So one of your workers would immediately go up to the 2nd level, while the other 2 workers scattered to the outskirts of the castle here. Now, once again, if you have more than 3 workers on subsequent spaces, you would continue to do that action, but it only affects your pieces. If you have to kick somebody out, then they would gain a benefit, or you could gain that benefit. Going back to the player board over here, this last action is going to be the inkwells. This is going to be the manuscript action. So, same thing for the crosses or inkwells. You can spend those in order to take the manuscript action. Now, coming back to the main board, you can see on these various manuscripts around here, there are various costs. So this one would cost, all of the first ones would cost you 3, but as you get deeper in, they're randomized. So this one would cost you 5, this one would cost you 3, this one would cost you 7. So you pay the cost and you gain the benefit immediately that is on the manuscript itself. These will also be worth victory points for sets at the end of the game. Now, that's a very, very quick rundown of the main actions. No need to go too much more in depth, but that's the basics of what each action does. After that, you are able to recruit the person that is on your space. Just like dismissing, you would pay the cost of this person. So this would cost the blue player 3. Then the blue player would take this card and put it in their discard pile. That means you don't get to play the card immediately, but when you reshuffle your deck, which can happen several times throughout the game, you will now have access to that card. It'll be in your main deck. That's the deck building element that comes into the game. After you do that, you will check to see if you have a collision. Now, collisions are very interesting in this game, and it's a big way that you will have a lot of character interaction between the players in this game. So, if, for instance, we were on this space here and we had a collision, we would now check to see at the very top, the player who had the collision would gain a coin and would gain one deed, and we'll get into deeds and debts here in just a minute. And every other player, if they have any criminal symbols, they would gain a corruption. Excuse me, my brain doesn't work very well. They would gain a corruption. They'd have to move the corruption marker on the board. Now, what's interesting about this is a dance between the corruption and the faith. Okay, so if you just push your corruption because you want to use as many of those criminal icons because they're wilds as you can really be moving this across the board. But as you get further and further to the right here, you'll see you'll end up taking more money, but you'll also take more debts. Debts initially will be a detriment because they will be worth negative victory points at the end of the game. Now, there will be ways to pay for that in order to nullify that, but that does take resources in order to do. The further your virtue marker is, and I keep calling it faith, but your virtue marker, the further it is to the left, the more benefits you get of less money, but more deeds. And deeds are worth 1 victory point straight out of the gate, and if you advance a deed, it's worth 3 victory points at the end of the game. Also, your opponents, if they're using their criminal icons, then they would be taking debts or they would be taking corruption. So it really comes down to you have to pay attention to what the other players are doing with this mechanic, because if you're just doing one way or the other, if you're just taking all the deeds, then maybe your opponents, nothing's happening to them. If they have no criminals on their board, then there's no detriment for them doing it. So you may want to play that and try to have your collisions at the proper times to really get into the mix with the other players. So after you check collision, you are going to draw back up to your hand size. Now your basic hand size starts at 3 and it can go up from there. Now that's a basic turn structure of the game. Before we go into my final thoughts, we'll do one full turn as a player so you guys can see it, so you guys can have a better idea of just how it works. But let's talk a little bit more about the rest of the game. So if you look over here at the main board, next to it I have this stack of deeds and this stack of debts. Hopefully you guys can see these, but these are very important. There is a variable length to this game, and it's all down to the players. So this deed deck has a certain size depending on the amount of players. Same thing as the debt deck. Now, if either one of these decks runs out, it signifies the last turn of the game. And more importantly, if the deed deck runs out, then all paid debts are now going to be worth victory points to whoever has the most. If the debt deck runs out, then every advanced deed is going to be worth victory points for the first, second, or third player to do that. And should you be able to, which I haven't been able to in about the over half dozen games that I've played of this, be able to empty both decks, it is possible, but I haven't seen it yet, then you will get benefit of both of those. So you will gain the benefit of all deeds that are advanced, and there will be victory points for all debts that are advanced as well. So this is a very interesting mechanic of the game in that the game length is really up to the players. If players are playing it very safe, they're having their collisions in the center of their board, then they're not gaining as many deeds or as debts, so the game can take a bit longer. And if people are going hardcore for the deeds, I want all the deeds or I want all the debts so that way I can advance the debts, then it really benefits whoever has the opposite. So if a player has emptied the deed deck, then if I don't have any deeds but I paid a lot of debts, that can be a lot of victory points at the end of the game. That is very interesting mechanic of this game. So you will take it in turns, each of you playing your one card on your board. You'll be playing your one card. You'll be slotting cards off. You'll be shuffling your deck when you need to. You will be moving around the board. Very important that if you land on the same space as another player, then you're going to get to switch your cards laying face up here. a few other things that you need to be aware of is this game, you really want to focus on a few different avenues that you're really good at. If you want to focus on the tower, you can focus hard on the tower and gain a ton of points. If you don't focus on the tower at all and you're focusing just on manuscripts and focusing on the various tableaus of manuscripts, so you can get multiple of the different varieties, you can gain a ton of victory points that way. I've played the game ignoring one avenue each time to see just how viable the game is, and it works quite well, and I've been able to win and had other people win using pretty much every way in order to play this game. So there's not any one way to play the game right, which definitely gives the game points in its favor. So what I'm going to do, if you have any questions about any of the gameplay or anything else, I'll answer that after I get to the review portion. But for now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into the review section of the game itself. So we here at Dice and Dudes, the way that we review games is we review as with a letter grade, and we review them in various categories and then do an overall category. From now on, we are always going to start with the component quality and the art. So first off, the art. Now, I hate that I butcher Mahalo's name, and I hope even Mahalo is correct, but his art is always fantastic. I love the card art on the game. The box art is fantastic. The art in the book is always great. I absolutely love it. He does a bang-up job every time. It really gives a lot of character and feel to all of the characters and everything. I love it. I have not been disappointed with any of his art yet to date, and I don't think I will be, because he definitely puts in a lot of work on his artwork. Now, some of it has been recycled from Architects and some of it from Paladins, but when the art is this good, that doesn't really bug me, to be perfectly honest. The component quality is very good, obviously. If you've read any of my reviews on Board in El Paso, or if you've watched any of our other review videos, you'll know that I love wood. Wood just feels so good in my hand. I love to touch wood. It always makes me feel good when I'm touching wood. So wood is always a great and fantastic component. I love when wood is in my game. I don't even care if the wooden components hit me in the face. I just love wood, every aspect of wood. Wood is fantastic. But also the quality of these cards is very good. I love the linen finish on the cards. The art, again, is very, very easy to see. The icons are very easy to see. The cardboard on the boards is nice and thick. The plastic tower in the center of the board is very nice. My only quibble is kind of with the player boards. I understand this game comes in a smaller box. I mean, this isn't even a standard size board game box, so they had to go with thinner play mats. I can pull one out here and show you, but like they're thinner play mats, but they are laminated, so they're a bit tougher than just paper. But I wish these were just cardboard, but that's kind of a nitpick on my part, just because I don't like it when they're too thin. But I mean, this is okay at best, but it's the only real downside to any of these, to any of the components would be these player boards. So overall, the player boards do kind of give it a bit of a knock. I said I was going to do a turn, so we'll do a turn after I finish the review, and then we'll answer any questions. So we're going to change things up. Haha, live TV and all that good stuff. So for the overall grading of components, I got to give this one, and like I said, that does knock it down. So on components on this one, I'd have to give it an A. And the reason it gets an A is because it's still so much of the wooden components. Your buildings are wood, your Viscounts are wood, all of your workers are wood. The nice thick cardboard on all of the manuscripts is really nice. The coins are really nice. I miss the metal coins that they had in the Raiders of the North Sea that came standard in the box, but I mean, that does get pricey after a while, so they do have to cut costs down, or else the game would be like $75, and I'd rather it be more affordable. So overall, component quality and art gets a B+, and only because of the player boards really knocked that down, or else it would have been probably a solid A. Next, we're going to go into rules complexity and what I like to call the teach. Now, we're going to start off with the teach. Now, I call it the teach because I teach a lot of board games and I teach a lot of people how to teach board games. And I get asked a lot of questions on various ways to teach board games and the complexity in teaching board games. So I like to look at how hard a game is to actually teach a new player. And I have taught 5 different people how to play this game separately. I haven't taught a large group, obviously, because of a virus whose name shall not be named. But because of that, I've only been able to have one-on-one sessions, which does maybe skew my view a little bit on this. But this game is very straightforward to teach. The player boards, even though they're thin, are very well laid out and they give you all the information that you need. So you don't really need to be flipping through the rule book too much. So that's very, very nice in that respect. Teaching this one, it is a moderate complexity game. So I put it right in the middle, maybe even like a 3 complexity. So maybe a little skewed towards the heavier side. But the rules are simple. I mean, movement's simple. Everything is done by symbols, and if you played any of the other games, Paladins and Architects, you'll recognize the symbols in the game. So it's not hard to teach, but it is a slightly more complex game. I would definitely take your time. This is probably a good, I would say 10 to 15 minutes of rules and then get into the game. Teach them a couple of turns. As they see a couple of turns play, they'll get it. I mean, it's once you understand the way a turn breaks down, the game is very simple to understand. The variable scoring on the deeds and the debts can throw people off sometimes, but once they play a full game of it, they'll understand completely. And this game definitely begs for you to play it more than once, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So the teach is not too bad for this style, but I got to give Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald a real big hand here. All of their games they seem more complex than they are. There's a lot of depth in the game, but the systems and mechanisms that they use are very simple. You don't see them everywhere, which can throw some people off, but they're not difficult to learn. So I do like the way that the rulebook is laid out. That is not bad at all. I don't have any problems with that. They do a pretty good job. If you read through the rule book, it kind of gives you an idea of how everything goes. So, and they do lay it out as if you're reading it, as if you're playing the game, which I do like. I don't like when rule books are very reference pointed. If you're going to have a separate rule book for that, that's fine. But I do like your rule books to follow the flow of the game itself. So yes, I do. I do appreciate what they've done with their rule books, and that's not just Viscounts. That's Paladins. That's Architects. That's Raiders of the North Sea. All that. They could use a little bit of work on some of their FAQs. They could have a few more of those questions answered. They did that with Architects and Paladins, but for some reason that was left out of Viscounts, and that's going to be one of the things that's going to give it a bit of a knock on this. Once again, for rules complexity and for the teach, I'm going to have to give this one a B+ as well, okay? And that is simply for the few things that it's lacking and the fact that it is a slightly heavier game. So some people may be a little confused at first, but give it a couple of turns and they'll have it. So rules complexity and ease of the teach is going to be a B+. So the last category that we're going to talk about is fun factor, and I say that with quotations because fun is subjective, and replayability. So fun factor and replayability. First off, as I said, this game begs to be replayed. It begs to be replayed over and over and over again. The way the top manuscript may always be the same, but every one beneath it is always going to be randomized. Each one of the decks is going to be randomized. You start the game with a particular hero, and the hero and your starting setup, so these are randomized every game, which just adds to the replay factor. You really want to replay this game and see what you can get. You take the number of players, add 1, and that's how many of these card combos you put out. So I have a 3-player game set up here. We would have 4 heroes with 4 separate setups, and you choose hero with setup. You don't get to pick and choose which one. Each one has the hero and the setup. That really, really changes the game. And you feel a real sense of ownership right out of the gate for what you're going to be doing in the game. If you want to make sure that you have a lot of worker power or that you have a lot of ways to thin out your deck, you can take the proper person, but sometimes that person may not have the best starting location. They may not have the best starting money or the best starting resources. So I love that part of the puzzle. That is fantastic. Again, as your starting location is randomized, the tiles on the board are randomized. Everything here is randomized. I absolutely love that. The puzzle of the game is so strong that it really, really begs to be replayed over and over again. And this one is definitely going to be in my 2021 H Index. Architects of the West Kingdom, I hit 12 plays in 2020, and that was even with the virus that shall not be named. This one I can expect to have as many, if not more, plays in 2021 because it's already got half the plays of Architects, and I've only had the game for about 3.5, 4 weeks now. So that is very, very good. For fun factor, this game plays fantastically at 2 players, 3 players, and 4 players. What? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, this game plays fantastically at 2, 3, and 4 players. If you're looking for a very solid 2-player game, I love this game at 2 players. This is, so far, of all of the games that Shem and S.J. McDonald have made, this is my favorite of their 2-player variety. Absolutely love this game at 2-player. It sings. It is the perfect length, the perfect complexity. There's just enough player interaction. It is fantastic. Love that. So if you're looking for a lower player count game, and if you're looking for something that is a little more complex but not overly heavy, definitely does not overstay its welcome. Paul, one of the other dudes, has a problem with games that feel like they're just getting going and then they end. When he played this one with me, he agreed that it ends at the perfect time. It really feels like your engine is humming and you come to a good conclusion before just getting your legs cut out from under you. I really think the game length on this one, while a little longer than Architects, is the perfect length for a game of this type. So for fun factor and replayability, this one gets a solid A+ from me. I absolutely love this style of game. I love deck building. I love action selection. I love the fact that I can go through any single path. I can go merchant heavy and just get tons of resources. I can build all of my buildings to gain tons of victory points. I can add workers to the castle to gain victory points. I can get a ton of manuscripts and then set some manuscripts to gain even more victory points. That is fantastic. I have gotten my brains beaten out in this game because I just didn't notice when my opponent was making gloriously good moves, and I wasn't trying to stop them with my collisions. I wasn't using my collisions against them. I was only using them to benefit me, and they just crushed me. So I love that mechanic. I love the collisions. I love the fact that the game length really comes down to how the players are playing. Are you going to go hard on deeds? If you go hard on deeds and your opponents are just they're paying every debt that they get, they're going to end up with 12 victory points at the end of the game to your 4 or none. So I mean, you've got to really think about it. I love a game like this. It doesn't have the complexity of something like Twilight Imperium or even Dune Imperium that just came out. It doesn't have that complexity, but it definitely has a lot of decision making, and it all just kind of snowballs and snowballs and snowballs and snowballs and becomes one glorious picture. So for me, fun factor and replayability, this one is a great A+. So talking overall score for this one. So it does have a couple of knocks for the player boards, a couple of the components, some of the rule complexity, but this one for me is a solid A. This one is definitely in my collection. It has a place. Even if I had 125 other board games that I had no way that I could ever get rid of, this one will become my 126th. Against my own rules, I love the game that much. It checks all of my boxes. It is beautiful to look at. It plays so elegantly and so well. I love Viscounts. This one is definitely going to be my pick for December 2020 of my favorite game of the month. While it cannot be my board game of the week, as I'm focusing more on party games this week for that type of stuff, if you are looking for something that is slightly more complex, if you're looking for something that you can play over and over, have a great puzzle and any of that, Viscounts of the West Kingdom is very, very good choice. I had it upside down, sorry. A very good choice in Viscounts of the West Kingdom. So before I answer you guys' questions, because I see I got a couple, I will go ahead and I will show you how a turn would work, acting as the blue player. So if we can look over at the blue player's board real quick. So let's say this is the second turn of the game. I now have my 3 cards back in hand. I would slide this guy over here. I would choose now my second, and I'm going to be a little cheeky. I want lots and lots and lots of merchant power. So I am going to go ahead and, sorry, let's say we're down here as well. I'm going to go ahead and play we're going to reset our stuff here. So I'm going to play a criminal. So that criminal, I played a criminal, so I do have to add a corruption. I have to move that marker down 1. Now I have to move. Now this is a 1 cost, so I can only move 1 space. The good news is here is I only want to move 1 space. So I'm going to come up here, and now I'm going to take the action. Now one of the great things that I did not mention is you can take any action no matter what your symbols are. You have that choice. It just obviously you benefit more for an action if the more symbols that you have. So here I have a total of 5 symbols, and I'm going to use a coin for a 6th symbol, so that way I can go ahead and discard up to 2 cards. If you see here, 3 for 1. So I'm going to discard 2 cards, and I'm gonna live dangerously. I want to discard this card here, and I don't want this squire. I'm going to discard this card here. And sorry, this action is destroying these cards. So these 2 cards would be out of the game, out of my deck. My deck would be more efficient to what I want it to do. Now I would decide, and I could have decided if I wanted to grab this guy. I did not. Now, because I want to go ahead and hire this guy. So I'm going to spend another coin and put him in my discard pile. Now I check to see if I have a collision. I have no collision. So now I would draw 2 cards to get back up to my hand size. And I got my Financer and my Trader, both 2 great cards. Then I would send play over to the next player around the table, and that's my turn. Nice and easy. Easy peasy lemon greasy when it comes to that. A lot of it comes down to just the decisions that you want to make. This game doesn't hit you too bad with the AP because you do have a limited amount of decisions. You only have 3 cards in your hand, and you already have stuff on your board. So there are decisions that are better than others. So you're not always, I have no idea what I want to do. There's always a way to go, which I have a few players that I play with that suffer from chronic AP. I would play this game with them. That is a bold statement to say about a game like this. So I do have a couple of questions. I have no questions. Okay, sorry. I saw a bunch of people talking on Twitch. I thought I had a question, but that's okay. If you have any questions about Viscounts of the West Kingdom, go ahead and leave a comment on this video. Best place to do that would be YouTube. Leave a comment, and I will get back to you. I'll answer any rules questions or anything else like that. If you buy Viscounts of the West Kingdom from whoever you buy it from, and you want some questions answered, or if you want someone to teach you the game, hit me up at Game Vault, and I will do my best to help you through the rules, so that way you can start enjoying this game, get it to the table, enjoy it even more than simply trying to learn all the rules by yourself, muddling through and all that. There are some great resources online. Rodney Smith, I'm not sure if he did a video on this one yet, but he's a fantastic how to play teacher, and his channel is called Watch It Played. John Gets Games is very good, and the guy from Gaming Rules is also very good. I would definitely recommend them to teach you the game, but if you prefer more of a hands-on approach, definitely let me know, and I will help you as much as I can. I think that's going to go ahead and do it for the dudes tonight. Short video, just getting our feet back under us. We're going to be doing more board game content, and we're going to be doing more D&D content. D&D content will be coming later down the road, but we will be getting back to all of that good stuff very soon. Expect at least 1 board game video a week, maybe 2, depending on the week. And watch out for Board in El Paso, the Facebook group, if you want to read a bunch of other reviews and my thoughts on other board games and just anything board game related. Definitely hit us up. That's BOARD in El Paso on Facebook. You do got to answer some board game related questions. So I think that's going to do it for us tonight. We're going to keep our typical send off, but we're going to change it up a little bit. So we're going to remember from us dudes to you dudes, dudes roll dice. You have a great night.